The Forgotten Colony. The skies above Nova Primus were always a peculiar shade of amber, as if the planet itself was trapped in eternal sunset. For 200 years, the colony had thrived beneath those skies, building cities from the planet's abundant minerals and adapting to life far from their ancestral home. They were proud, resourceful people, descendants of Earth's pioneers who had settled this distant world before the Great Silence. Ilara Reeves stood atop the observation platform of Hadley Station, her dark hair whipping around her face as she adjusted the long-range scanner. At 32, she was the colony's chief astronomer, though these days that title felt like a relic from more optimistic times. No one much cared about the stars anymore. Not since communication with Earth had abruptly ceased 83 years ago. "You're wasting power again," came a voice from behind her. Administrator Jensen, with his perpetually furrowed brow and policy manual clutched to his chest, like a holy text. "I detected an anomaly," Ilara replied without turning. "Multiple objects decelerating at the system's edge." Jensen sighed. "Trade ships from the Centauri Alliance, most likely. Or perhaps another asteroid cluster." "No," Ilara's fingers flew across the console, enhancing the readings. "These are massive vessels, moving with purpose, and they're not broadcasting any recognition codes we've seen before." The administrator finally showed a flicker of concern. "Hostile." "Unknown," Ilara said, though the sinking feeling in her stomach told her otherwise. "But they'll reach orbital insertion within 48 hours. That night, the colony's council gathered in the underground chamber beneath the central administration building. 23 men and women representing Nova Primus's 2 million inhabitants, farmers, engineers, educators, and the small defense force that hadn't seen action since putting down a native predator outbreak a decade earlier. "We should evacuate," urged Kamala Devi, the agricultural director. "Move people into the cave networks. And abandon everything we've built," countered Marcus Williams, head of the defense force. His weathered face tightened with resolve. "This is our home. We defend it." Ilara displayed the enhanced images she'd captured, based on their configuration and approach vector. "These are military vessels, at least 12 capital ships with supporting craft. Their technology appears significantly advanced compared to our own." Jensen's face had grown pale. "Do we have any weapons capable of repelling such a force?" The silence that followed was answer enough. 3 defense platforms in orbit, a handful of atmospheric fighters, small arms for the defense force, nothing that could challenge what was coming. "There is one other option," Ilara said quietly. All eyes turned to her. "The deep bunker. The original colony ship's communication array is still there. It has capabilities our current systems don't. That equipment hasn't been used in decades," Jensen protested. "And Earth abandoned us long ago. What good would it do?" Ilara met his gaze steadily. "Earth didn't abandon us. Something happened. War, disaster, we don't know. But Earth built this colony. And the communication array in that bunker was designed to penetrate any interference. It's our only chance to call for help." "Help that will never come," Jensen muttered, but he didn't stop her when she left to access the sealed facility. The bunker lay beneath half a kilometer of rock, accessible only by a single elevator shaft that hadn't been used in a generation. Ilara's authorization code still worked. A small mercy. The air inside was stale but breathable as the ancient life support systems hummed back to life at her approach. The communication array took up an entire wall, a masterpiece of Earth engineering from an era when humanity had just begun its expansion to the stars. Unlike the colony's current communication systems, this one had been built with one purpose: to reach Earth, no matter what stood in the way. Ilara worked through the night, restoring power connections, replacing damaged components with salvaged parts she brought from the surface. The array had been designed to last, built by people who understood that colonies might someday need to call home in their darkest hour. As dawn broke over Nova Primus, the alien ships entered high orbit. They were massive, obsidian structures with angular protrusions that seemed to absorb rather than reflect light. Beautiful and terrifying in their perfect symmetry. They made no attempt to communicate. The first kinetic rods struck the colony's orbital defense platforms 90 seconds after arrival, obliterating them in silent flashes of expanding debris. The colony's small fleet of defense fighters never even made it out of atmosphere. On the surface, panic erupted. Civilians fled toward emergency shelters as the first alien shuttles descended toward the capital city. Marcus Williams and his defense forces established a perimeter, their weapons looking pitifully inadequate as the massive landing craft touched down. When the invaders emerged, the colonists got their first look at the Corvellians. Tall, gray-skinned humanoids with 4 arms and elongated skulls that housed their extraordinary brains. They moved with machine-like precision, their armor shimmering with energy fields that deflected the colonists' desperate weapons fire. "This world is now under Corvellian protection," announced their commander, his voice translated through a device that made the words sound flat and emotionless. "Resistance is both futile and unnecessary. We bring order to primitive worlds. You will benefit from our guidance." Deep below the surface, Ilara finally completed the restoration of the ancient array. Through the bunker's monitoring systems, she watched in horror as the invasion unfolded above. The defense force was being systematically dismantled, citizens rounded up into containment areas, and then she saw the Corvellians deploying what appeared to be communication jammers around the colony's perimeter. They were cutting Nova Primus off from any potential help. Ilara's hands trembled as she activated the array, praying the Corvellians wouldn't detect its unique transmission signature. The message was simple, containing their coordinates, basic information about the invaders, and a desperate plea. "This is Nova Primus Colony. We are under attack by unknown alien forces with superior technology. Our defenses have failed. If Earth still exists, if anyone hears this, please, we need help." The transmission fired, using Earth's old emergency protocols, designed to pierce interference, coded to authenticate as a genuine colonial distress signal. The ancient machinery hummed with power, channeling enough energy to send the message across vast interstellar distances. The bunker doors slammed open. 3 Corvellian soldiers entered, weapons raised. "Unauthorized communication detected," one stated. "Explain purpose." Ilara raised her hand slowly. "Historical archive access," she lied. "This facility contains our colony's records." The lead soldier approached the console, studying it with apparent recognition. "This is long-range communication technology. Primitive, but effective." He turned to his companions. "Destroy it." As they moved to comply, a small indicator on the console flashed green. The message had transmitted successfully. Whether anyone would hear it, whether Earth still existed to receive it, those questions would have to wait. The Corvellians took Ilara into custody, marching her to the surface where thousands of colonists were being processed into work groups. She caught glimpses of resistance being brutally suppressed. Jensen was there, his face bloody but his eyes defiant as he tried to negotiate better treatment for the colony's children. "Your species is resilient but disorganized," the Corvellian commander told Ilara when she was brought before him for questioning. "We have encountered human colonies before. All eventually accept Corvellian guidance. This isn't the only human world," Ilara said carefully. The commander made a dismissive gesture with his lower set of arms. "Your homeworld has been silent for many cycles. Our intelligence suggests Earth destroyed itself through internal conflict or environmental collapse. The scattered human colonies we have encountered exist in isolation, unaware of each other. You are orphans of a dead civilization." Ilara said nothing, but held onto a small spark of hope. The Corvellians thought Earth was gone. They believed humanity was fractured, weakened. What if they were wrong? 3 months passed under Corvellian occupation. The aliens were not cruel masters, merely coldly efficient ones. They dismantled colonial governance, replacing it with their own hierarchical system. Resources were redirected to building facilities for purposes the Corvellians did not explain. Children were separated into education centers, where they were taught Corvellian philosophy and science. Resistance existed in small pockets. Marcus Williams had escaped capture during the initial invasion, and now led a guerrilla force in the northern wilderness. Their attacks were pinpricks against the Corvellian occupation, but they kept hope alive. Ilara found herself in a labor detail, leveraging her scientific knowledge to help the resistance whenever possible. She had almost given up hope that her message had reached anyone when the first odd incidents began to occur. Corvellian communication systems experienced inexplicable failures. Their orbital sensors reported phantom readings. Supply shuttles went missing. The occupiers increased security, blaming the local resistance, but Ilara recognized the patterns from her studies of Earth's military history. Someone was conducting reconnaissance. On the 97th day of occupation, the Corvellian commander called an emergency meeting with his senior officers. Ilara, working nearby as a technical assistant, overheard fragments of their conversation. Multiple objects approaching. Configuration unknown, not responding to identification protocols. That night, a massive storm system formed over the capital with unnatural speed. Under its cover, resistance fighters struck at key Corvellian installations. In the confusion, Ilara slipped away from her assigned quarters, making her way to the colony's central communications hub, now controlled by the occupiers. She needed to see for herself what was happening. The facility was in chaos. Corvellian technicians worked frantically at consoles, trying to restore connections to their orbital fleet. Through a viewport, Ilara could see strange lights moving across the amber sky, brilliant flashes that could only be weapons fire. A Corvellian officer grabbed her arm. "Return to your quarters, human." Before she could respond, the building shook as something massive passed overhead, a sound like rolling thunder that vibrated through the colony's foundations. The Corvellian's grip loosened as he looked up in disbelief. Through the viewport, Ilara saw it. A massive ship breaking through the cloud cover, at least 3 times larger than the Corvellian vessels. Its hull bore the unmistakable insignia of Earth, the United Nations spiral surrounding a stylized Terra. Tears filled her eyes as realization dawned. Earth had survived. Earth had received their message. Earth had come. Thunder from the stars. The first Earth vessel to break atmosphere was just the vanguard. More followed. Dozens of ships ranging from nimble fighters to behemoths that dwarfed anything in the Corvellian fleet. They moved with precision that spoke of advanced tactical AI, deploying in formations that systematically isolated and neutralized Corvellian resistance. Unlike the Corvellian invasion, this was not an indiscriminate show of force. The Earth vessels targeted military installations with surgical precision, avoiding civilian areas entirely. When ground forces deployed, they came in sleek drop pods that pierced the atmosphere like meteors, landing directly at strategic points throughout the colony. Ilara watched in awe as the first soldiers emerged. Their armor seemed alive, shifting colors to match surroundings, bristling with technology that made the Corvellian equipment look primitive in comparison. Most striking were their helmets, featureless except for a horizontal blue visor that glowed with quiet intensity. "Clear the building," one shouted, voice amplified but unmistakably human. "All colonial citizens, proceed to the central plaza for evacuation." The Corvellian officer who had grabbed Ilara raised his weapon, only to freeze in place as a pulse from the soldier's gauntlet enveloped him in a containment field. 3 more Earth soldiers swept through the facility, neutralizing Corvellian resistance without firing a single lethal shot. Outside, chaos reigned. But it was controlled chaos. Earth ships maintained air superiority while ground forces established secure corridors for civilians. The Corvellian command structure was collapsing as their communications and sensor networks went dark, compromised by infiltration systems that Earth had deployed days before the main assault. Ilara found herself being escorted by a soldier whose armor identified her as Commander Chen. "Are you Ilara Reeves?" Chen asked, her visor retracting to reveal a woman in her 40s with keen eyes and a scar that ran from temple to jaw. "Yes," Ilara stammered. "How did you?" "Your message," Chen replied, guiding her toward a secured area where medical teams were treating injured colonists. "It reached Earth. Took a while. Our quantum relays had to boost the signal multiple times. You're quite the hero back home." Home. The word struck Ilara like a physical blow. Earth is still there. Still thriving. Chen's expression softened, more than thriving. United. Expanded. "We've been searching for lost colonies like yours since the disruption ended. Nova Primus was on our recovery list, but your signal accelerated the timetable." The disruption. 84 years ago. A cascading failure in the quantum communication network that connected Earth to its colonies. Took us decades to rebuild it, and by then, many colonies had gone silent. We feared the worst. Around them, the battle for Nova Primus was rapidly becoming a rout. Corvellian ships attempted to retreat, only to find their hyperspace engines disabled by Earth's electronic warfare systems. On the ground, their soldiers were surrendering in growing numbers as the technological gap became apparent. The Corvellians said they'd encountered other human colonies. Ilara said that they'd conquered them. Chen's expression hardened. "They've tried. Twice before. Failed both times, but we lost contact with those colonies during the fighting. We've been tracking Corvellian expansion patterns ever since, trying to get ahead of them." She paused. "Your warning gave us the evidence we needed to act decisively." In the central plaza, Earth forces had established a command center. Holographic displays showed the battle unfolding in real time. Corvellian resistance collapsing as Earth's technological superiority became undeniable. Marcus Williams and his resistance fighters emerged from hiding, joining with Earth forces to secure outlying areas. The colonists who had been imprisoned were released, families reunited amid tears and laughter. For the first time in months, Nova Primus breathed freely. Admiral Takahashi, commander of the Earth fleet, addressed the colony's leadership. Unlike the imposing figure Ilara had expected, she was a slight woman with silver hair and calm eyes that had seen countless battles. "The Corvellian threat has been neutralized," she announced. "Their fleet is disabled. Their ground forces have surrendered. Nova Primus is free." Jensen, his face still bearing scars from Corvellian interrogation, asked the question on everyone's mind. "What happens now?" "That's for you to decide," Takahashi replied. "Earth doesn't claim authority over its colonies. We offer reconnection, technology, trade, protection, but your governance remains your own." Later that evening, as Earth medical teams treated the wounded and engineering crews helped restore damaged infrastructure, Ilara found herself aboard the flagship, UNS Prometheus. Through the observation deck's massive viewport, she could see her world below, and beyond it, the stars that suddenly seemed less distant. "Hard to believe," said a voice beside her. A young officer named Sato offered her a cup of coffee. Real coffee. Something Nova Primus hadn't tasted in generations. "A month ago, we weren't even sure your colony had survived. And we thought Earth was lost," Ilara replied, savoring the bitter aroma. "How many colonies are there now?" 47 confirmed, spread across 23 star systems. Another dozen we're still trying to locate. He sipped his own coffee. "The disruption set us back, but it also taught us valuable lessons. Earth is different now than in your histories." "How so?" "United, for one thing. The old nations exist as cultural identities, but humanity governs itself as a single entity. Necessity demanded it." He gestured toward the stars. "There's too much out there, wonders and threats alike, for us to remain divided." The Corvellian commander was brought aboard under guard, his posture rigid with wounded pride. Admiral Takahashi received him in the ship's conference room, where Ilara and colonial representatives had been invited to observe. "Your attack was unexpected," the Corvellian admitted. Our intelligence indicated Earth was no longer capable of projecting power beyond its immediate stellar vicinity. Your intelligence was outdated, Takahashi replied evenly. A common failing among species who underestimate humanity's resilience. What will become of my people? The commander asked. They will be returned to Corvellian space with a message. Earth's colonies are under protection. Any further aggression will be met with the same response you witnessed today. Takahashi's voice remained calm, but carried unquestionable authority. We do not seek conflict, but we will not permit the subjugation of any human world. The Corvellian commander studied her with his large, multifaceted eyes. You could destroy our civilization with your technology. Why show restraint? Because domination is not our way, Takahashi answered. Cooperation benefits all. Conquest ultimately destroys the conqueror as well as the conquered. After the Corvellian was escorted out, Ilara approached the admiral. Will they return? Try again elsewhere. Takahashi's expression was thoughtful. Perhaps, but not soon, and not without consideration. Today they learned something many species eventually discover. Humanity thrives against adversity. It's written into our DNA from thousands of generations of survival against the odds. In the days that followed, Nova Primus began its recovery. Earth ships remained in orbit, a protective umbrella as the colony rebuilt. Engineers installed quantum communication arrays, reconnecting the colony to Earth's network after 83 years of silence. Medical teams distributed advanced treatments that cured diseases the colonists had struggled with for generations. Most importantly, they brought knowledge, the history of what had happened after the disruption, how Earth had nearly torn itself apart before unifying, how the rediscovery of lost colonies had become humanity's great mission, each success celebrated across worlds. 1 month after liberation, Nova Primus held a ceremony in the central plaza, now rebuilt from the damage of occupation. Colonial leaders and Earth representatives stood together beneath the amber sky as a new monument was unveiled, a communication array, stylized in gleaming metal, representing the signal that had brought Earth's forces across the stars. Ilara, honored as the ceremony's central figure, placed her hand on a commemorative plaque that would forever tell the story of Nova Primus's darkest hour and subsequent salvation. As she did, a flight of Earth fighters roared overhead in formation, trailing plumes of color that lingered in the atmosphere. For too long, we believed we were alone, she said, addressing the gathered crowd. We forgot that humanity never abandons its own. Today we rejoin our brothers and sisters among the stars, stronger for having endured, wiser for having persevered. The colony erupted in cheers as Earth's ships illuminated the amber sky with lights that rivaled the setting sun. Nova Primus was no longer the forgotten colony. It was part of humanity's expanding presence in the galaxy, a presence that growing numbers of alien civilizations were learning to respect, and some to fear. That night, as celebration continued across the colony, Ilara stood at her old observation platform at Hadley Station. The scanner that had first detected the Corvellian ships now showed the Earth fleet in orbit, guardians against a darkness that no longer seemed so overwhelming. Admiral Takahashi joined her, gazing up at the stars now filled with new meaning. They didn't believe you would come, Ilara said quietly. The Corvellians thought Earth was a myth, a story we told ourselves for comfort. Takahashi smiled. A common mistake among those who face humanity. They see our scattered worlds, our apparent fragility, and think us weak. She gestured toward the celebration visible in the distance. They don't understand that separation has never diminished our connection to each other. And now? Ilara asked. Now Nova Primus takes its place among humanity's worlds. Your people will help us find others who are lost. Help us face whatever challenges lie ahead. The Admiral's eyes reflected starlight as she spoke, because that's what humans do. We endure, we remember, and when called, we come like thunder from the stars. In the years that followed, Nova Primus flourished, becoming a hub for Earth's continuing mission to reconnect its far-flung children. The Corvellians, chastened by their defeat, opened diplomatic relations with humanity, the beginning of a wary respect that would eventually lead to cultural exchange and cooperation. And throughout human space, the story spread of the colony that had held on through generations of isolation, never forgetting its heritage, never surrendering hope that someday Earth would answer its call. They had been right all along. No matter how vast the darkness between stars, humanity's light could never truly be extinguished. For wherever humans made their home, on ancient Earth or distant worlds beneath alien suns, they carried with them the unbreakable bonds of their shared origin and the promise that echoed across the cosmos: no one gets left behind.